Is that one thing that does the most? Oh wow.
Are you right? You're taking me higher. Hey, hey. No. She looks like you are disjointed.
Oh, I was going to ask what's our take on submission, especially as women, submission and feminism. Obviously, as believers, the Bible says as women we should be submissive to our husbands, and obviously that men should love their wives as Christ loved the church. But like talking to people these days, you realize that I think a lot of people get to see submission as being inferior.
Yeah.
So, what do we think about it?
To be honest, submission used to be a word that scared me a lot. And I didn't like that word. I was always like, submission, submit. Just, it doesn't even roll off the tongue nicely. But I think unless you really get to a point where you're willing and ready to submit to God, it's difficult to explain for me personally, but I think there's a reason why God says for us to submit, you know. And one of the things that I came to realize as well, that where there is love, it's very easy to submit. And I think that's why in the Bible it's added, men love your wife just as Christ loves the church. It's easy for me to submit to God, right? Because I know God loves me. If I know that my husband loves me, or my partner loves me, or whatever, it's easy for me to submit, because when I know that you love me, I know that you have my best interest, at heart. And so like there are things that you will do that maybe I would have done it differently, but I won't necessarily question it like that, like put up a big fight, because I know that you have my best interest at heart. You're doing it out of love, rather than I just want to exert dominance.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things.
Okay. So my take on submission is, I don't think it means that you're becoming weak or becoming lesser. It's coming under a certain authority, and you know that something above you is great and has your best interests at heart. So being submissive is, okay, I may not understand this right now, but in the long run it's going to better me. So I just don't think it's becoming a slave or becoming lesser, or you're the weak person in this relation. It's like, no, it's just acknowledging that this person loves me just like you said, and has the best interest in heart for me, and knows that when I'm under that authority, then I know that my life is headed in a better place.
I mean, it's the same as saying you live in a country, you will submit to the laws of the country, you know, and when you don't, there are consequences. Not saying beat your wives when they don't submit. That's not what I said. Or like, you know, it has to be like a negative something. But wherever there isn't submission, there's a consequence, right? So if there's an authority that's been placed over your life and you don't submit to that authority, there is a consequence, and it doesn't always manifest instantly or in a bad way. But unfortunately, what we don't realize is that we don't always see things that manifest in the spiritual realm. And so you're not submitting physically, and you think you're the boss, this, but you don't know the things that you're shifting into gear spiritually, just from you being your stubborn self, or you just doing agidiba inside the house. Nobody can tell me anything. This is also my house. We are two heads in this house. One of the things that I've really started teaching myself to say is that this man is going to be the head of my family. And it's something that like I'm consciously saying now, because I want it to be something that I respect and fall under later on. So it's not like, oh yeah, he's going to be my husband. No, he's going to be the head of my family. So.
And I think submission actually goes both ways, and we don't tend to realize this. For you, even for the men too, they have to submit, because it's like, okay, women submit to your husbands, but we forget that as a man as well, he has to submit under another authority. So he's also submitting as well. But I guess the issue is we've had, I guess, men who have abused that. So most women, well, some women tend to see it as submission. You want me to be your slave, or you want to take advantage of me. But in reality, I think if there is love, there has to be submission. It's more like, okay, like what my sisters have said. I know that you have my interest at heart. You know what's better for us, and I'm trusting that you would make better decisions for us. Yeah.
Like where there is love, there's submission comes easily.
But I think it's also important to understand what authority that the person you're submitting yourself under is also submitting to. So it's like, what are you submitting under? I think that's basically my issue. It's, if I meet somebody, I want to know who you're submitting under, who you're surrendering to. You know, is God the one that's leading you, or are you led by money? Are you led by addictions or other things as well? Because whatever you are submitting yourself under is what I would be submitting under as well, because I'm expected to exactly submit under your authority.
And I guess that's why we have to be so careful about who you yoke yourself with. You know, the Bible talking about do not be unequally yoked. It's important as well to know this man that I'm obviously going to marry, will be living in the same house. These are the things that he believes in. Because I remember one of the, and I guess this raises a question for us as well. One of the questions that came up at the very first Friends with Better Benefits, there was this lady, and she's Christian, but she was married to a guy that was Hindu. And religiously, if you're Hindu, you're a vegetarian. You don't eat meat, all of those things, if I remember correctly. And so, but she's always had meat her whole life. So now she's in this marriage. Her husband doesn't eat meat. Her husband doesn't mind her eating meat. However, they had a child, and her husband said, "I don't want my baby to eat meat." But she was going behind her husband and giving the child meat. And so she came and she was like, "I married this guy. He's the head and the authority of my home, but he doesn't eat meat, and I eat meat, and I'm feeding my child meat. Is that okay?"
Things are supposed to have addressed even before.
Is that okay? And one of the answers that came was that at the end of the day, that's your husband. Whether he's Hindu, Muslim, whatever, that's your husband. He is the head of your home. If he says don't feed the child meat, don't feed the child meat.
But what if the child grows up and is like, "Dad, I want to eat meat"?
That's the child's decision. So long as you're not making that decision for the child.
It's kind of very interesting household, because I'm just thinking like how they raised in the child.
How do you raise the child?
Yeah, like
because you believe in God, you want the child to go to church, but your husband also wants, you know. So it's all those things like, and one of the things I've come to learn is that the things in the Bible, everything that God says, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. A lot of the time, yes, they come off as laws and stuff, but sometimes it's also for our own protection. And that's the thing that we don't realize, because everything has consequence. Everything that you do, there's an end result. Whether you see it or you don't see it, it manifests in a way, and there's always a consequence behind it. So yeah, you love this person, you guys, you know, you can't get enough of each other, all of that stuff, but then you have a child. Who's that child going to worship? You know, there's already that struggle of so long as they live in the world, there's going to be those temptations, things. But now there's also division in the house of who is God, and so now this child is growing up with two gods. Who's God to that child?
Like one grandpa.
Yeah, and how do you, as a woman of God, cope with that? And I think someone read something in Proverbs that talked about women that marry men that are not Christian. So if you marry an unbeliever, you should live your life so that the man through you might come to know God. And that means that, you know, still doing the things that as a woman of God you would do, even if you were married to someone that, you know, serves and loves God. So you'd still serve your husband, you'd still submit to your husband, all of those things, because that's the God you serve. Just because he's not Christian doesn't mean when you leave church and you come to your home, you stop being a Christian woman. Yeah.
There's also those situations where people submit, but then they come to you as like your husband's Christian, but then your husband's abusive, and then there's those dilemmas too.
But in that situation, do you think? I don't know. I think
Somebody said, God did not call you to come and die.
yeah, I don't think God also.
True. You have to use wisdom.
Yeah.
For that one.
Like
you have to live in separation.
Life at risk.
Do you think it's okay though to stay in an abusive relationship?
No.
Just
No,
because
it's
you
not.
want
I
divorce?
don't think no.
Never.
Yeah.
No.
That one will never be okay.
No. If
What
someone loves you, I don't think they would abuse you.
The thing is, I feel like there are people that genuinely love people
And
that's
see
still
them in pain.
and still it's a twisted sort of thing, because sometimes I feel like a lot of it has to do with the way we function up here, right? So you genuinely care about this person and you want the best for them, but sometimes you snap. And some people, honestly, they get to a certain point, because we all have that, right? I'm not comparing hitting someone to insulting someone, but there are some people that they literally get to a certain point and it's almost like there's a blanket over everything. Like they don't care, the things that will fly out of their mouth. For some people that comes in action, that comes in physical retaliation. So they get to a certain point and it doesn't matter who you are, they will lay hands on you. That's not
but
okay.
Would you classify verbal abuse, emotional abuse,
Oh, it's
spiritual
all
abuse,
abuse.
physical abuse?
It's all the
Yeah,
same.
so
it's all
then-
the same thing. So it's like, and that's why I'm saying, for some people, it gets to a certain point where something triggers. And again, that's why they always say abuse is never about the victim, it's about the abuse, whoever it is that's doing the abusing. You get to a certain point and you get so triggered that honestly your brain functions just, nothing's working the way it's supposed to do, and then you retaliate, whether verbally, emotionally, physically. And so, like, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend if you're in a relationship and you're being abused. Me, I'll be the first one to say, Auntie, you need to.
But they say love is blind, and they say I really love this person.
If that person is abusing you, isn't that also a sign that there's something wrong that needs to be addressed?
To be addressed, yeah.
But I watched this I think it was a documentary or some show, and the person was interviewing someone who used to abuse someone,
Yeah.
but they didn't recognize that all their actions were classified as abusive things.
Oh.
That at all. They were even listing that, or would you say locking your partner in the house and removing the keys was a bad thing, and then you going out and coming back hours later? It's like, no, I was giving her time to think.
But then there's something
See,
wrong with
that's
it. Once
someone-
you realize that there's
that's
something
some-
wrong.
exactly.
Yeah,
And that's
so
why-
it takes them
Wow.
time
Exactly.
to realize that what their actions is actually abusive,
It's
and then
actually
you correct that,
abusive,
because
yeah.
for them that's normal. That's them showing
For
you
some
love
people,
and showing
that's
you the
all they
space.
know.
That's
Yeah.
all they know.
But then there's something wrong.
So
and I
I-
would not advise.
And you know the thing is, right? The unfortunate thing is, there was this statistic I heard the other day. It takes a person, a victim of abuse, at least 9 tries, something like that, before they leave.
Yeah.
They actually leave.
It's
the
either they escape or they die.
They die.
That's the
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
goes, and for them to try leaving, they try at least, it was some ridiculous number like that. They
Like
try
many,
and
many
leave
times.
quite a few times
Yeah,
before
successful.
they'll finally say, okay, I'm leaving, and that's if they're not killed. And it's so funny because you think, man, why would you live with someone that beats you? But then think about all those relationships you've been in. That man was not good for you, and you knew that man was not good for you because the things they were saying to you, how they were treating you, and even the values did not align, but you were still in there.